book I was chosen to read is called Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And first I want to talk about some of the interesting facts about Emily and how her childhood influenced her writing. When Emily was growing up, she had two sisters and a brother and her mom and dad. And her dad worked at home, and so she was able to read a wide range of published materials in her father's office there. And Emily and her sisters loved to write fictional stories in their spare time. But unfortunately, when Emily was only about 6 years old, she lost her two sisters and her mom due to a sickness that was spreading across England at the time. Her father didn't want to lose her with her other two sisters, and so he decided to pull her out of school, and he decided to homeschool her instead. And because she was homeschooled, she had a lot more time to write more fictional stories, and she even began to develop some interest in poetry as well. I think having the loss of her two sisters and her mom really influenced her writing and definitely influenced why she even wrote Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights was published in 1848 and is now considered to be a classic. Wuthering Heights takes place in the late 1700s in England, and the family it centers around is the Earnshaw family. It centers around the daughter Catherine Earnshaw and another character called Heathcliff. Heathcliff first comes into the scene when Catherine is about 10 years old. And Catherine's father is an upstanding gentleman who I'd say is mid to upper class in the English society at that time. He finds a gypsy boy, and he's an orphan, and Catherine's father decides to adopt him, and they call him Heathcliff. So Catherine and Heathcliff are the two main characters in this book, and this is how they meet. Right away, Catherine and Heathcliff find that despite the fact that they come from such different backgrounds, they actually have a lot of similarities in their souls and personalities. They spend a lot of time together growing up as kids, and they enjoy each other's company. And as far as spending more and more time together, what happens is I thought they continued to influence each other, and they began to become more alike and virtually become soulmates. Because of this, they share this really strong, incredible love for each other that they don't even realize or acknowledge to themselves. Now, the major problem in this book is when Catherine is about that age where she needs to start looking for a husband for her, and all of a sudden, because of society's ideals, Heathcliff is no longer the appropriate love for Catherine. And that's the reality. Catherine is an upper class lady that needs to be with an upper class man in society's eyes. And Heathcliff is a gypsy boy who works in her father's stables, so she doesn't see him suitable for her, for being her husband. And now what happens is Catherine has this idea in her head that she does need an upper class man and a suitable husband for her. And she thinks she finds him, and his name is Edgar Linton, who is actually her next door neighbor. When Edgar goes to meet Catherine, I think he actually does kind of like her, and he really likes how different she is from him and how fiery she can be at times. And Catherine then kind of convinces herself that she really does love Edgar as well, and some things about him. I mean, she sees him as a good husband figure, but what she ends up really doing is not following her heart, and she denies her love for Heathcliff. Heathcliff overhears the conversation, and he ends up leaving the farm for a while, and no one really knows what happens with him for a while. And meanwhile, despite the struggle between Catherine and Heathcliff, she marries Edgar. And in the meantime, Heathcliff ends up coming back. But now he's rich, and he is now what he thinks is an acceptable husband for Catherine. But the problem is, Catherine is already married, and Heathcliff, of course, is heartbroken. And instead of completely showing his feelings, he marries Edgar's sister, Isabella. And basically, we're talking two different couples that are so completely different. They're like hot and cold. And as the time goes on, Heathcliff becomes more and more rational. And as far as Catherine goes, she's continuing to try to convince herself that Edgar and her are happy together. But the love for Heathcliff never really goes away. And what happens towards the middle of the book is that mysteriously Catherine becomes very, very ill. Despite the fact that Heathcliff is married to Isabella, of course he rushes to her side, and because of this, he tells her that she's becoming like really, really sick. Like he sees it, that she's lying on her deathbed. They chose not to follow their hearts, they chose to follow societies instead. And essentially, it's because Catherine and Heathcliff deny their love, and Heathcliff even says, like I said before, he says Catherine is lying on her deathbed. And on page 197, he says, "Why did you betray your own heart, Kathy? You loved me. What right did you have to leave me? Why did you kill yourself?" And another paragraph states, "I have not broken your heart. You have broken it. In breaking it, you have broken mine." And that's it right there. That illustrates the tragedy in this book, because again, Kathy chose to follow society's ideas and their wants for her instead of following her own heart. And as she continued, she denied the love that was always right in front of her. As the book continues, Heathcliff's life continues to spiral down. He continues to become more and more irrational. He makes everybody's lives around him miserable. And what I've taken from this is that the author is trying to warn us not to follow society's rules, but to follow our own heart. If you find someone who is special and you really like them, and that you think you're soulmates, go with that person. Even if they don't follow society's rules, race shouldn't matter, social status shouldn't matter, and what matters is what's on the inside. And what society may want from you isn't always the best. And I was looking through the textbook, and in chapter 16 on page 412, it talks about how social and political philosophers were examining the problems with the contemporary society more systematically during that time period, which the book was published, which is in 1848. And that's another reason why I think that Emily really emphasized how a person needs to follow their heart instead of following society's ideas for them. And another book that I thought was kind of similar to this, it was a love story. It's called The Last Song by Nicholas Sparks. It had this quote that I had in my mind that really went along with this book. And he once wrote in it, "Sometimes you have to be apart from the people you love, but that doesn't make you love them any less, because you love them more." Or sometimes you even love them more. And this quote describes Catherine and Heathcliff's love for each other, because when Heathcliff left, Catherine's love for Heathcliff was still there, and it continued to grow. But unfortunately for them, it was too late. But the time they spent away from each other made them both realize how much they really did love each other. They were both with these other spouses, and they weren't getting along with them. All they could think about was Heathcliff or Catherine. The first half of this book I thought was really good. It wasn't as depressing as the last part. I really had to only read a chapter at a time, and because it was so exhausting, there was so much depression, and it was tearing you apart. It really made me think about it. And overall, I really liked the book. Even though it was depressing, I still really did enjoy it. But I would definitely recommend it to anyone who likes reading romantic stories. And overall, I really did like it.